my clicker. Great. Good morning, colleagues. It's great to be with you again. I just want to say first and foremost, on behalf of the 32.5 million teachers in the 400 organizations in the 172 countries, we want to send you our solidarity and our best wishes to all of you today on your Congress. So they wanted me to tell you that. But they also said, if you're going to be in Denmark, and since you are American, but I would like to say that I am currently an asylum seeker in Belgium. That's given the current occupant of the White House, that sort of orange glow there, that maybe we should bring also in the fact that my colleagues from the Greenland Teachers Union are here, that there could be an issue, an apology that could be made on behalf of all of America's teachers, students, parents, and citizens with brains and memories and knowledge of geography and history. Unfortunately, the leader of that country, I hate to say that, the occupant of the White House in that country is a bit geographically challenged. He remembers back to the good old days where they bought Manhattan from the Native Americans for a few shells. Unfortunately, he hasn't been paying attention very much to what happened since then. And so on behalf of all of us, humanity, sorry. But I also thought that maybe we could have a little, we could try to figure out a way of playing with his geographical challenged mind by offering him, or just saying, that's Greenland. Leif Erikson did that. No. Or maybe we could say, and this is, I don't know if there are any Norwegians in the room, this is maybe out of taste. Or we could keep going, he won't know. So, colleagues, it is indeed a pleasure to be with you. This is a little blurry picture, I think. That's me in the front. And what I'd like to say was that was a formative moment for me, being with you all. I looked out onto a sea of eyes. Look me in the eyes, right? You had the posters all over the country. Like, am I really going to be more effective and efficacious with less time to collaborate and plan? At that time, it was the new conflict, and now I'm with you again at the beginning of the new start. And I do wish you all the best, but I will like to say there is something that for the teaching profession globally, and there's many of us that are in this fight, who are in these moments, when we're fighting for the tools, those resources, and the time we need, and the trust we need, the tools, the trust, and the time, that those are three important sides of a triangle that cannot function without one of the others. So I do hope that you take those forward, because I do think that the Danish model, and I have worked with DLF for a very long time, and particularly in doing development cooperation work in developing countries who talk about the Danish model. And if you remember at that time, back then in 2013, I said, I want to be able to say it is a model. I want to be able to say it does work. I want to be able to say that the trust, the tools, and the time are there. And we have an ethical standard as educators. We do no harm in education, and we also knew that, and you knew at that time, that you could not do the best for your students if you did not have the adequate time to prepare and to collaborate and do that work. So I look forward to what comes next. We had some conversations yesterday that were very promising with Thomas, who was very good. And there's some lines and areas for work. But those sort of fundamentals, I think, are very, very important, and the research does bear those out. Anders also talked about Congress, where I was elected in July. It was a big Congress, 1,500 delegates we had from member organizations around the world. And to say, I won't give you my progress report, which was about as long as Anders' progress report. I won't do that because I don't have that much time, and I wouldn't do that to you. His was much better. But I will give you a glimpse of some of the things. We refer to the big three. We had three sort of thematic days that we talked about there, given what's happening in the world. With the rise of authoritarian populism with Trump and Bolsonaro and Erdogan and Duterte and Orban and so on and so on. We wanted to talk a lot about democracy. We wanted to talk about rights. We also wanted to talk about the system, the education system itself. You're talking about the ideal folk school. Yeah? That's very important to know what you're for. It's very important because the comment has been made, we often sort of react constantly to what's happening to us. So we spent some time at Congress talking about free, equitable, inclusive, democratic education for all. Not some, all. Yeah? And yes. And we also talked about status. So system, status, rights, and democracy. Status refers to all, it encompasses all that has to do with our profession at this current moment. At a time when corporations and neoliberal governments are trying to convert teachers into simple content delivery machines. Yeah? What we do is much more than that, and you've been talking about that. We had 46 resolutions. The Congress, it felt for me like it went on for about 2 months, but I think in total it was about 6 to 7 days, depending on when you started. The idea for the Congress, we had all the pre-Congress, the higher education, early childhood, education support personnel. We had the Francophone group. We had, not yet the Lusophone group, but we're working on it. We had the Anglophone group, the Commonwealth. We had regions coming together. We had young members. And the point was, at the beginning of Congress, it was fine for all of that. Yeah? But at the end of Congress, the idea was that we were united and together with a purpose, a joint purpose to take forward. And that's exactly, I think, what we did, and it was very successful. I want to talk to you about just a couple of the things that DLF has contributed so very much to over the years, and also thank you, but talk about each one of these in turn. The first one is the global response. I think DLF was an early adapter in our global response campaign, if I should say that, because the idea of global response, now that's $5 trillion in education budgets around the world that the private sector would like to monetize, commercialize, and extract value from. And that's a big concept to get your head around. And so in the global response, we actually started looking at what that looked like, both in the global north and the global south. And we did what educators do best. We researched it. We investigated it. You see the research that we've done. Each one of those pieces of research up there are part of a campaign that we led in a specific country. And I will use the example of Liberia, because that's the one where what you did was you took your development cooperation programming work there, and you aligned it with our campaigning work, so that as we were building capacity, we were also building space for the leadership of the Liberian Teachers Association to have a place at the table to say, wait a second, students deserve free, inclusive, quality education for all, with a trained, well-paid teacher that has rights. What's happening in Liberia was that Pearson, working with the World Bank and DFID and others, were putting iPads in the hands of sometimes secondary graduates, but not always. We're turning basically people into robots reading off of a tablet in a classroom where children were sitting on the floor. And DLF, you worked with us to raise awareness about this all around the world. And I think one of the culminations, one of the great ones, was when we were actually able to sort of do a takeover at the African Union Education Ministerial, where all of the ministers that came off the plane, we put a giant billboard there at the airport that says, students before profit. Yeah? And a student, and you did that. I was just at the United Nations last week. I missed the encounter between Greta and the orange one. But I wanted you to know on your behalf, I also brought the issue of the climate crisis and what the world's educators are going to do in terms of building space, demanding space, both in terms of training, in terms of our professional development, in terms of time, there's that word again, to be able to talk and link up the climate crisis with larger geopolitical things that are happening, to try to put it into context. We were very supportive of the students. We worked with the students' movement. I actually had this sign out, the whole side of Education International during the climate strikes had this sort of sign that said, teachers across the world are with you and very, very proud of you. And I was standing out there, people were coming to do selfies and something, and this group of students started running towards me in gas masks. Some of you might know this story. They were just running right at me, and I was like, you know, what are they going to do? And all of a sudden, at the last possible moment, the leader of the group of the students in the army fatigues and gas masks ripped off her gas mask and went, "Daddy!" I don't know if you'll ever remember the first time you encountered your child on the streets in a protest, but boy, is that pretty great. Hunter started his speech about democracy. And quite frankly, friends, if we don't lead in this area, nobody else is going to. Yeah? We're in every community, we're in every school around the world, and we are organized around democratic principles. The trade union movement is one of the fundamental pillars of democracy, and democracy is sliding, both in democratic countries and under siege all around the world. What we did was at our 25th anniversary, you'll see Fred and Susan there behind me. That's my predecessor, Fred van Leeuwen, who just retired last year, stepped down. And Susan, we did an exercise to think about. I don't know if you know the book On Tyranny. Do you know the book On Tyranny? Sort of 10 lessons about how tyranny and how fascism comes up. Timothy Snyder's the author. I recommend it to you if you haven't seen it. But he wrote the foreword for our book. We went around asking, what are the lessons about education and democracy? What is it that matters? What is it that you think we should be able to teach and have the space and the time to teach that? And we put those together in the 25 lessons. And those will be also part of a Education for Democracy campaign that the Congress also approved and we'll be developing and building out. But I hope it's being translated into lots of languages. The Mexican teachers have made sure that everyone got it in Mexico. We have it in Polish and Russian and French and Spanish, probably not yet in Danish. But you also read English very well. It's for free on our website, so if you'd like to download it, there's a poster too. But I wanted to make that available for you. On the EI Executive Board, we have a man named Raymond Basilio, who's a very good friend of mine, and I know maybe many of you know about him. Raymond is one of those people that speaks truth to power. He's a teacher trade unionist, and he's not scared. And he's living in a country where extrajudicial killings have reached the tens of thousands. President Duterte just kills people who speak up against him, or he harasses and he threatens them. Raymond hasn't slept in the same bed for 2 nights in a row for the past year. He is completely underground. I was there twice, right before Congress and before we led a Council of Global Unions meeting there. I put him up there just because it's important to remember that what's happening in Hong Kong or what's happening in the Philippines or what's happening in Brazil is also happening to us. That's our movement. This is something we need to be aware of and we need to take action on. One of the only reasons that we were able to get France released, his predecessor, who was also arrested. Let me say why they were arrested. They were taking aid to a group of children in the Lumad area of Mindanao province, indigenous kids. That's an area that the president has carved up for corporations there and doesn't want any schools or any people there. So they arrested France. She won the Arthur Svensson Award this year, the trade unions Nobel. And basically the reason we got her out of jail was because of an urgent action appeal. It's because we wrote hundreds of thousands of letters and we need to do that over and over and over again. So urgent action for democracy and human rights will be something that fundamentally EI, and I know DLF is very much dedicated and committed to, and that needs to go forward. This is the executive board. Now, your head will spin on this one, so I'm not gonna actually do the wheel, okay? The wheel was, someone gave me the idea, said, how do you represent EI in a single graphic? You should try to do this for your own organization in a single representation. But after a long time of thinking about it, what it became into was a planning tool. And it's relevant to you because where you are right now in taking decisions about your values and the values of your profession and the folk school, this document. Because right to the center, the axis of the wheel, are our members and our values. Those are the constants. Everything else spins around those. You have different levels. You have the big three that I mentioned, but you have our tools, you have our strategies, you have our sectors, you have categories, you have people, you have places, regions, right? But those things move around those core values. Those values is what defines us, and those values are what unites us, whether it's here today in Copenhagen or right now, actually, the South African teachers are having their Congress in Johannesburg or wherever. This is what unites us, and I think this is why we get targeted so much. I think this is why, whether there's somebody who wants to sell clean coal curriculum, so for say, the climate change isn't happening, or say that teachers are indoctrinating young people by teaching them about their rights and democracy. These are the values that hold the wheels aligned and on the road. And I know these are very important for you, and I know these will be very important for you going forward, but I just wanted to commend you for this important work that I think you're doing and look forward to the debates around that. This is how we use it as a planning tool. I'm not going to get into that too much. Okay, 1 second. And we're stuck. Oh, that's all right. I hope that the next time I come here, I hope that the next time I stand in front of you, or next to you, or behind you, the new start, the new deal, the new agreement will enshrine those values, will enshrine your vision for not only Danish society, but stand as a new Danish model for all of societies, global societies. Thank you very much for everything you do. We are very, very happy to be with you, and we wish you all the best for the rest of your Congress. Thank you.